Hello everyone, it's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. Just today, Aptera put out this tweet that said California ran on 100% renewable energy for the first time ever this past Saturday. Um, and it led us to this USA Today article. As I was reading this article, they mentioned that they got this from the California Independent System Operator. So I Googled that, and it leads you to this website, which I found fascinating. As it turns out, this California ISO is basically a grid operator. They're like a super grid, basically. They run the really huge high power lines that send large amounts of electricity from one grid to another grid to sell to various local utilities. And if you look at this map, they cover basically all the population centers in California. They don't cover this very northern part here, like Death Valley here, and this like really unpopulated inland part near Arizona. It's like Glamis and things like that. A couple areas in the Central Valley here that aren't covered, but basically this covers all the mostly populated parts of California. So it's a huge network. There's various other system operators around the U.S. and Canada that operate grids like this, and their website is really cool to play with because if you look at this, it tells you a lot of information that I didn't know. It tells you right now like what the current demand is in California, and then they're forecasting that this is the peak demand that they're going to have today, and this is the total capacity they have. And so they have a total capacity of about 40,000 megawatts, and they had historical peaks of 50,000. So this is, I guess, when we had the rolling brownouts in California, is when the demand is way more than the peak, and we have to try to import power from adjacent grids. And if we can't get enough power, then we're gonna probably have brownouts and stuff. But if you look at this is the demand trend. So you see that our lowest demand is around 3 a.m., which makes sense because everyone's sleeping and probably no one's at work. And then as everyone goes to work, it goes up. And then I'm not too sure why this falls. I'm guessing this is because people leave their house. This graph curve makes me think that most of the electricity demand in California is driven by residential use rather than business and industrial use. Because if it was business and industrial use, you would expect kind of a peak during working hours, which is like from 9 to 5, right? Or 8 to 5, right here. But there's actually a slump, as I think this is like people are waking up and they're like using electricity at home, and then there's less electricity. This is the electricity that industry uses. So it's not very much. And then there's a huge peak in things as people come home and watch TV or and cook and do whatever, recharge the electric cars. And then it peaks around 8 o'clock and then just goes down as people go to sleep. And then it keeps falling throughout the night and then ramps back up. What's interesting here is this is system demand minus wind and solar. So this purple line is the amount that has to come that comes from not solar and not wind. So you see during the mid part of the day, there's very little power that's required that's not being funded by wind and solar. Only about 1.4 megawatt hours. Excuse me, 1.4 megawatts. And what's interesting is if you go here and look back, you can see, like if you go to August, which is the hottest part of the year, like let's say Friday, and you'll see that the curve looks totally different. And it peaks out earlier. This is like, it gets hotter throughout the day, and then, this is when the air conditioning is kicking in. So you don't see that dip in the day like you do now when the weather is milder, and you see that there's a lot more electricity use. Peaked out at like 33. So we have more than enough capacity within the grid to handle this because we have about 40 megawatts. But if it's unusually hot, then we're gonna max out the power. And then let's go back to January and see what January looks like. Yeah, so January has much less electricity use because we generally don't heat our homes with electricity. Then if you look at the supply side, this was also interesting to me too. Um, Currently, solar is not generating anything. If you look at our current supply of what we can do, most of it's from natural gas. But what you'll notice is the natural gas is shut off for most of the day. Renewables constitute 20% of the uh, of a total capacity. But and then what I thought was interesting is that large hydro here is not considered by this ISO as renewable. So that day when 100% renewable energy, that was not including large hydro. Large hydro was not considered um, renewable energy. Their renewable energy is well, right now it's mostly wind because solar's not the bigger thing. But if you look at it during the day, it's mostly solar. So here we go. Let's look at this. Um, if you look at this, this green line is solar. So excuse me. This green line is renewables, and it's mostly solar, which I'll show you in a graph below. And you'll see that this orange line is natural gas, and so natural gas is giving us the power. They're giving about 7 megawatts, and you see they have about 8.4 megawatts of capability. They're producing about 7 megawatts, and then as the renewables ramp up during the day, the natural gas ramps down. And then you see this is how much we're importing or exporting from this grid. So at night we're importing some, and then during the day we're exporting. So that you see the imports are negative. So we're sending power out actually during the day. So very interesting. And coal is a very small part of the grid, and nuclear is very steady. So you see, nuclear just gives about 2 megawatts continuously throughout the day, 2.25, 2.275. And then there's also batteries that are listed right here. So they're charging during the day. You see that they're negative, and then batteries are giving back power. And then this is really important because there was that I made a video about that one company in Southern California that's taking old Nissan Leaf batteries and using them as grid storage. And they had a system by which you could take the entire pack out of the car and just plug it into these closets. And it was very little work. And their system basically works for almost any EV battery. And EV batteries are going to become very prevalent because EVs are going to become a huge part of the market. And then after the EVs batteries have been used for 10, 20 years, when they are not good enough to be used as an EV battery, they still can be used for another 10, 20 years as grid storage, which is a great thing. And then after that, they can get recycled, hopefully. And there's companies working on recycling batteries. So if you look at the renewables, you'll see that during the day, as the sun comes up at 6, solar is the dominant producer, and then it goes down as the sun sets. And wind is fairly constant, kind of picks up in the afternoon, and then everything else is pretty negligible. Geothermal is like the next highest, pretty steady. And then this biomass, biogas, small hydro, those are pretty minor. But you'll see the vast majority of it is solar. And then here's the batteries. These are those companies like they talked about. So they'll basically, when solar is producing a lot, they are charging the batteries because at that time energy is cheap. We're producing more than we need really. So energy is cheap, so they buy it. And then when the big spike happens, as people get home at 5 o'clock, then they discharge and they sell the energy back to the grid. So they buy cheap and sell high, and then that's how they make the batteries work. And here's the imports where we're taking from other grids. We're importing and then we're exporting here. All right, so it's a really fun if you go throughout the day, you'll see these numbers changing a lot. And I guess on Saturday, there was a time in the afternoon when the current demand and the current renewables were about the same. So we're a long ways off from supplying everything by solar, but for certain times you're getting very close. So right now, from about 10 a.m. to about 4 p.m. Most of it is being funded by renewables, but we still need it during this time at night when solar's not running. But at night when solar's not running, that's generally when we're not using as much electricity. And this is where battery storage can kind of come into the picture. So as solar becomes even more prevalent, we're going to generate even more during the day, and then you're going to need grid storage like with old batteries to smooth this out. Anyways, you should go check out this webpage. It's a lot of fun, and I just thought it was interesting since we're kind of all interested in solar power, and Aptera tweeted about it, and then I found this pretty fun website to play with. All right. Well, any comments? Discussion? We always like that. Comment below, and thanks for watching, and have a great day, everyone.